Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Blue Ribbon Lounge podcast.
Yes, welcome back to the beautiful Blue Ribbon Lounge.
Oh, it's so beautiful, though it's so messy, but that's okay. It's a livable space.
Yes, it means it's lived in.
Lived in, loved in, and not in that way, you dirty time travelers, you.
Yes. Well.
Well, yeah. Well, anyways.
Yeah, all right.
We got another episode for you.
Yes, we do.
And whatever that may mean to you, it sure does mean a lot to us. We're having a good time.
Yes, and we're glad that you're here with us.
Yeah.
Listening.
Wherever you are, whenever you are.
However you are.
But we hope you're doing well.
Yes.
So what do you got, Dave? You know what? I'm going to be straight with you folks. Because if there's one thing I am, it's honest. With you, the listener.
Yes.
Don't tell your friends that don't listen. Because we want to make sure that they think this is perfect podcast all the time. I was doing research. I promise that I did research. And something keeps bing-bonging over here.
Bing bong.
I wonder if this will help. Check.
Check it in.
Hey,
check.
we're still recording, so
yeah.
I'll leave that in. But I did do research. I did not write anything down.
Oh,
and that's a no-no for me.
Yeah.
So I was frantically trying to write down everything I remembered when Davey showed up, and that's okay. I'll get you. I won't give you false information.
There you go.
But like we always say, this is just kind of something to get your brain revved up, whether it be, aliens from outer space or ghosts or history from the past.
Yeah, true crime.
Yeah, maybe it'll send you down a rabbit hole.
Miscellaneous.
Yeah, a rabbit hole longer than an hour,
Yeah.
You can only have full episodes of one topic. It's hard to cover everything.
Right.
So maybe something in here will pique your interest, and yeah.
Right. So I kind of see where you're coming from because, I just got back. There's all this construction.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So because I was downtown and then trying to get uptown, seemed like every road I turned on was closed.
It does feel like that right now.
Yeah, but I was down at the Sidewalk Art Festival.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Everybody.
What city is that in? The Davenport?
Rock Island.
Rock Island.
Because they had a bunch of shirts that said Rock the Chalk.
Rock the Chalk.
But I don't know if that was the name of the actual, I guess, festival
event.
or event.
Or it could have been like a little sub-event. Yeah,
it was pretty cool, though. A lot of good artists out there.
Yeah, it's cool to get people out and doing art and stuff.
Yeah, it's amazing what you can do with just some sidewalk chalk.
Oh, for sure. I have seen some crazy ones.
Yeah, and they had, I guess there's some kind of band factory.
Band factory. Just pumping out bands left and right.
Yeah.
A real piece of the music industry.
Right, and it's like the QC rock shop, or
I have never heard of it.
No. Okay. Well, the first band was an all-girl teenage band from the rock, whatever it is. It's a school. Yeah, it's like a academy, rock academy.
I have heard of that one. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So they had a bunch of bands down there. So I'm feeling like it's their showcase before they probably take a break for the summer.
Yeah. What I think it is so these kids are doing music, lessons.
Yeah.
And then I don't know how, because I'm not involved particularly, but somehow they put kids together in bands.
Right. Or maybe they kind of naturally group together.
Yeah. Between light interests and stuff.
Yeah. Because the first band was pretty good. It was they were like a punk.
Ooh, tight.
Yeah. Because the first one, I didn't recognize the song, but I thought it was good. It was very girl angsty.
Okay. This was the all-girl band?
Yeah.
Punk rock band?
Yeah, and then they played The Offspring. Self-Esteem.
Okay.
And
how's that one go?
I'm just a sucker with no self-esteem.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
La, 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 la.
Yes, that's what I needed.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and they were actually pretty good. And then they had a boy band that started out with Primus. Puppies.
Oh, tight.
Puppies. Yeah.
That's some big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm not, musically inclined.
Right.
So I don't know. So I hear things and I have to trust people's judgments when they're like, oh, that's really hard to play or something, but I feel like I've always heard that Primus is kind of good music for like technique.
Yeah, like bassists.
Yes. Who's that guy?
Les Claypool.
Les Claypool. Yes.
Yes.
Have you seen Primus?
I have.
Where was it in town?
Yeah, it was at the Adler.
Okay.
They were doing some concept album, and so then they came out and they played some hits, and then they played the full album in its entirety, which was neat, but I wasn't hip to it.
Yeah, it's hard to play new music because you want that. When I go to shows as a fan, I want the ones I know.
Right, and this one was like a concept album, which was based on a book about these 3 trolls or something.
Tight?
Yeah.
Like based on like a real book?
Yeah.
Oh.
So that was kind of neat. But then, I was just there to hear the stuff I knew.
Yeah. Did they put on a good show, a performance?
Oh, yes, they did.
I have heard that about, and their music videos are all very...
Yeah.
Well, of course they're well done, but they're all like very artistic, I feel like.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how the show was, because I didn't know, because obviously they're doing their new album and it was a concept album, but then a lot of people were dressed up as pieces of art from the album.
No.
So I don't know if that's just super fans or if they had like plants in the audience to have these costumes on.
I mean, not a bad idea if they were plants, really immerse everybody.
Right.
But also, if they were super fans, good for you.
Yeah, and that one was cool because we were like, got into because it's the Adler, it's a theater, but we were like in the aisles and like crammed up next to the stage, and the ushers were kind of being like, go back to your seats, and they give up after like 5-10 minutes. They're like
obligatory, like, go back to your seats.
Yeah, you can't just stand up here.
That's funny. Well, and that's hard because I feel like we don't have a good open floor venue in the area right now that I can think of. Like Raccoon Motel's okay.
Yeah, it's just kind of narrow.
Yeah, super narrow.
Because there used to be Palmer Auditorium, which was, you were pretty much on the basketball field or basketball court.
Well, and then I guess the Capitol's been doing shows again. When we went and saw Guar.
Did you see that last night?
No, last year.
Oh, okay.
I did see that they were back though.
Yeah.
When we saw Guar, all of the like pit seating was removed.
Oh, okay.
But then I went to the Capitol and saw Stavros Halkias, the comedian.
Yeah.
And there was a bunch of folding chairs there. So
so it's like a folding chair thing.
Yes. So like, when you want to sit and watch a comedian versus when you want to stand and watch a band.
Yeah, because Guar was there with Static X.
I did hear that.
Yeah, and Dope.
Are you a big Static X fan?
I can't recall.
I can only think I thought the lead singer died.
I think he did too.
So maybe they got somebody to replace him, but he had like 4 big spike hairs.
Yeah. He reminded me of the like a Slim Jim.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But my friend Chris, this guy I know, Travis, was going, and my friend Chris was like, "You're gonna go see a band where both the lead singers are dead because Otis Arungus from Guar's dead." Yeah.
Well, and I saw him without Otis Arungus, obviously, but and that's super funny. But they put on a good show when I watched them. That was the first time I've seen them, and I had never really listened to them.
Yeah.
But
I feel like that kind of like rock punk kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're good. I don't know if they're like punk, but they're definitely like the heavier like.
Yeah, I would say more like metal in my opinion.
Meat,
well, and you know what?
Sandwich. Oh, that's my favorite song. That one and Sick of You.
Well, okay, so and I guess I don't post it a lot on the Facebook, the Blue Ribbon Launch Facebook, but I do another podcast now, Black Magic TV. That motherfucker, Tyler, on there, he fucking just has a mind for like entertainment.
Yeah,
like he just pulls crazy movie information out all the time, and music stuff. And he's very, I feel like he's pretty, excuse me, I should probably take that out, I don't know. We'll see. But I feel like he's pretty good at like putting bands into categories, yeah.
Okay.
Which is helpful. Even though I try to stay away from that kind of stuff, but it is helpful when you want like lately I've been into like some doom metal type stuff.
Yeah.
Which is a lot different than regular metal. And
yeah, I never really got into the subgenres. We're like, well, this is acid metal, and this one is speed metal, and this one's screamo, and this one's emo, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I usually try to just describe bands to other bands.
Yeah, I mean, the most one I do is like there's punk and then there's pop punk.
Yes, yeah.
There's a difference
for sure.
Yeah. And I'm sure, I guess there's also like street punk, which is like dirtier.
Yeah, and I'm like, what is that?
Right. Yeah.
Because I'm the same way. I'm just like, just punk. And even if it's like borders two things, I just pick one. And
or like you can say rockabilly, but some of it could be more like bluegrassy or bluesy, and then some of it could be more rocky and
and like traditional rockabilly and
then like classic rock kind of sounding.
Yeah. But that's all right. Whatever you want to listen to.
Yeah.
And you know what? Put some good music in the Blue Ribbon Lounge Facebook page.
Yeah,
I'm always looking for new stuff. Whenever people are like, "Oh, dude, you didn't go to the show," and I'm like, "Yes, because you didn't tell me."
Yeah, it's that there was a show.
Yeah, I can't know anything I don't know.
Yeah, that's why I think the new thing I've seen, at least with comedians, where they're like, we don't want to steal your data, but we just want your email address so then we can tell you, because they have problems when they go to a city and they'll be out and about and somebody will be like, oh, hey, man, I like your comedy. I didn't know you were in town. And he's like, okay.
Yeah, well, I mean,
if I had your email, you would know, that kind of thing. Yeah.
And they write it down on a slip of paper and give it to them or something.
Right.
Like the Raccoon Motel, I love what they're doing for the area, but gosh dang, do some marketing.
Yeah, something.
And I sometimes I wonder if it's like the idea of like guerrilla marketing,
like
or
word of mouth type stuff.
Or like only if you really want to know, you get to know.
Yeah,
you like do the work for it.
You have to get the reader and flip through the activities section or whatever. Or if you're like, oh, I really like this venue, like even the Adler, the Capitol Theater, Raccoon Motel, you have to go to their website and then see what they have.
Yeah,
it's not like it's just like broadcast to you somehow.
Yeah, which is maybe a failure of me in the 21st century, I've become so lazy. I want everything given directly to me. I won't go out and do the work, because certainly before, I guess, punk bands that I knew of would put up posters in the cool places that I go.
Yeah.
So if you go to a cool place and you see a poster, you will more than likely enjoy it, is what I would think.
Yeah. Say what you will about like the Insane Clown Posse, when they were first started out, all they had was like a little pull behind like trailer and then like a van, but they would go into a city, say they're going to play a weekend in Indiana, like Indianapolis, and they would
in Indiana.
Yeah, they would get there like on Wednesday, and then they would just spend like 2 days or like a Thursday just papering everywhere.
Yeah,
so to get people to know that they were there.
Smart.
I mean, because being a new band, you can't necessarily get on the radio.
Yeah.
I mean, you could probably call them and see, but just to go around and put flyers up all over,
which really like gives like, it's tough to be a musician because like you're not getting paid for practicing and writing and traveling and stuff like that. You only get paid to play a show.
Yeah, and
people want it to be cheap,
right?
And then to have to go out and do a bunch of work, like you really can't just show up and play a show to a bunch of people, who haven't heard of you. Right, that's tough.
Unless you can really wow them, and then make sure they know when the next time you're going to be around is. Yeah.
Well, I guess that's probably why I'm not an artist. Or at least not a paid artist.
Right, yeah. But if you out there listen to the Blue Ribbon Lounge, want to share and like this, maybe we can get a little groundswell going.
Yeah, share this. Share the things that are going on in your area.
Yeah.
Share things.
Share,
Be part of your community.
Right. You can be part of the Blue Ribbon Lounge community and share the stuff that's going on in your area on the website, and then other people can see it and be like, oh, maybe I'll be in Raleigh on the 17th. I can catch that show.
And you know what? What I do is I find, like, I don't go to a lot of festivals.
Yeah.
But I like to kind of scan the listings and be like, oh, I'll check out this band or this band.
Yeah.
that's a lot of times how I find new music is people post shows or they had a good time at this band, and then I can go look at it on the internet as opposed to being there.
Well, that's kind of like for Torquefest, what you did. You were getting excited for it, so you made a little playlist and you put it on your Facebook page.
Yes, I would like to do that more often.
Yeah, that was kind of cool.
Which I missed a couple of bands. This band from Des Moines, all-girl band. My wife's going to kill me because I can't remember what it's called. But they are now performing with the Necromantics, who one of their albums made my top 5 first podcast with the One Night Standards.
Right.
And so that's pretty cool to see a band fairly locally.
Yeah, and then it kind of gets
regionally.
Big.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a band in North Carolina. They were called they had some big, long, artsy name.
Okay. Which is come on.
It was like the self-indulgence of one's mind or something weird like that. And I thought they were really good when I saw them because they opened for Jimmy's Chicken Shack. Okay. And I saw them in a little bar, kind of like the Raccoon Motel size. And then later on, when I saw Korn, they were the local opener for the opener for Korn, who I don't remember who that was. But then they just called themselves Self.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, hey, that's that lead. I'm like, oh, that's the same band. They just shortened their weird
smart
name just as Self. And I thought they did good, but the crowd was throwing lighters and stuff at them. But,
oh, shit.
Yeah.
That's fucked.
I thought so too, but I'm like, they were doing good, but they weren't, they were more, see, there's that thing, alternative as compared to grunge rock or whatever you want to call
that
rap rock.
Softer than Korn? Korn is a pretty heavy band, right?
Yeah, it's softer, but not super soft. But
it's not super soft.
It wasn't it wasn't Korn.
Yeah,
I couldn't even tell you who opened for them.
Don't throw things at people.
Yeah, not at the band.
Yeah, don't throw things.
Yeah.
All right, you know what? I'm going to get this out of the way.
Okay, what you got?
So I was doing some research on April 27th, 1988. A Boeing 737 flight number Aloha Airlines Flight 243 was heading out of the Hawaiian. It's like a Hawaiian island hopping plane.
Okay,
but it was still a giant Boeing.
Yeah.
So the concept of these planes is what I was gathering is people do a lot of business between islands, or maybe the flights are so cheap that if you have family on a different island or just want to go to a different beach or something, you can just hop on and go. And
it's kind of like an Airbus.
Yeah. That's funny. But so the flight crew included this Captain Robert Schornsteimer, who had 8,500 hours, almost 7,000 of them being in Boeing 737s, and he had been flying with Aloha Airlines for 11 years. The first officer, Madeline Tompkins, had 8,000 flight hours. Over 3,000 of them were in the Boeing 737s. And she had been flying with Aloha for 9 years. And she was hoping for a promotion to captain. There were 3 flight attendants, Clarabelle Lansing, Michelle Honda, Jane Sato Tomita. They had 37 years, 14 years, 19 years of flight experience.
Yeah, so seasoned.
Yeah, so very seasoned. And it seemed like a lot of them had been with this company for a long time. And the surfing of the Hawaiian Islands means these planes make short flights, but a lot of them.
Yeah.
Aloha 743 or 243 had been flying passengers for 19 years and made more than 89,000 flights, having the second highest flight record at that time in 1988.
Well, those islands are close enough together. You think maybe you get 2 or 3 flights a day, maybe?
Okay, so at 1 p.m., Flight 243, but preparing to depart from Hilo, Hawaii, the Big Island, to Honolulu on the island of Oahu, a 35-minute island hop. And this was its 9th for the day.
For the day, yeah.
So you're getting... And that's at 1 o'clock, so, that's probably halfway through your day, maybe.
Yeah.
So you're getting like 18 flights a day or something.
Right. So if that's 9 divided by, so it's like 4, you're roughly 4 hours into your shift. If you just hop and then hop back and then hop and then hop back.
Well, and then like the hop back would have passengers too. So, and so this flight is a 35-minute island-to-island flight. At 1:23, the flight takes off, and 20 minutes of that 35-minute flight is just climbing to altitude.
Yeah.
So it's like essentially like a spike up and then a spike down, essentially.
Right.
That's what it seems like to me. And the weather seemed good. At 1:45, the flight hit cruising altitude, and an explosive decompression happens and tears away 375 square feet of the top of the plane.
Ooh.
So like, the plane gets torn away in a way that now the first 5 rows of seating are exposed to the air.
Yeah.
That decompression happens so like as you get higher, it's higher pressure.
Yeah.
And so the pressure is just like rushing in and creating a lot of debris and stuff. With such a short flight, the flight attendants were still passing out drinks at the time.
Yeah.
And one of them, Jane Sato, was struck by debris. And as the plane depressurized, this becomes a situation where the passengers and crew are subject to hypoxia, which is a lack of pressure, or which is an excess of pressure and lack of oxygen.
Okay, like what happens on Mount Everest.
Yes.
Okay.
And also, like, I think we covered it with Daredevil Brian, that I think you had brought it up, that Red Bull space freefall.
Yeah.
Like that guy had to wear like a crazy suit.
Yeah, pretty much like
and oxygen tanks, I think.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Like an astronaut.
Yeah, essentially like an astronaut. They're essentially in space, as close to maybe a human could.
Right.
And survive. And so with the explosion and the ripping of the plane, the supplemental oxygen system was also ripped away.
Oh, okay, because it was the top of the plane. I was wondering
Yeah.
about that, because that's where the bags drop down from.
Yep. And so, like, even the ones that the bags were still there and dropped down, there was no, the system was open.
Yeah.
So all that oxygen was more than likely just flowing out into air. And so the pilot and co-pilot, a bunch of the electronics get ripped away as well.
Oh.
And so they are still able to make communication with a close tower. And this is where I don't want to speak out of turn because I didn't write all this stuff down.
Okay.
So I'm just going to start being kind of vague about it.
All right.
So that's my bad. But you feel free to check any of this out because it was actually a pretty interesting story. So they're trying to maneuver this plane that's been essentially almost ripped in half.
Yeah.
And some of the passengers were talking about how like they could feel like the floor like buckling and flexing underneath them.
Ooh.
So they try to deploy the landing gear. They do get into contact with the closest tower and landing field, and they deploy their landing gear. And the flaps on these planes have more to do with flying as opposed to landing. There's certain flaps for landing and certain flaps for flying.
Yeah.
But they needed to be stable, so they put the flaps at 50%, even though they were landing.
Yeah.
And they put the landing gear down, and the rear landing gear lights came on. The front landing gear light did not.
Assuming that those aren't out.
Right.
Okay.
And so they're coming in for landing, talking to the tower guy.
Yeah.
And the tower sees that their front landing gear is out.
Okay.
But without that light being on, there's no way to know that it's like
locked.
Yes.
Okay.
Damn, Dave. Fucking airplane guy over here. They do end up landing the plane.
Yeah.
And the damage to the roof was in such a way that like the underside of the plane, it was like damage all the way down to like where the seats were.
Okay.
And I can't remember if what I had seen was an actual picture or just like a model.
Yeah.
But like there's floor struts in the plane to like hold all the seats.
Yeah.
And wiring and stuff. And those were the only things holding it together.
Oh, okay.
Like, and so it's like, you got this massive plane on like just structure that's supposed to hold seats down and like the weight of all the passengers and stuff like
that. Like kind of like just joists.
Yeah, like yeah, if you had no floor and like no walls.
Yeah.
But you just had joists or something. And there was one gal getting on the plane who they questioned afterwards that there was like some cracking along the side of the plane by some rivets.
Okay.
And that was the weak point in which the roof ripped off.
Oh, right.
And even prior to this, the plane was designed for a 20-year service life and 75,000 flights, which this plane had exceeded.
Yeah.
It was like, what was it, 89, 85,000? But they were all short flights, so it's like you're supposed to change your oil after so many hours and or this long of time. Yeah, and I usually go with whatever happens second.
Yeah,
but this is in the 80s, so these types of big planes, I didn't do enough research on how what the history of public flight was.
Yeah.
And from what I saw, it started around the 1910s, 1920s.
Really?
Which does seem early, but that could be like rich people or like very few flights or something.
Yeah.
But I didn't go into enough detail about that. But like I said, this plane had surpassed the quantity of flights, but not the age, and they were all very short.
Yeah.
And the way a plane is put together, and have you ever worked in the fuel refill department?
No.
Okay. Because they do some of that stuff there.
Yeah.
At your place.
Yeah.
And the way the plane is put together is like it's panels that are glued together with some sort of super strength adhesive, I would assume, and then they're riveted into place to hold while the adhesive cures. And before this even happened, Boeing had warned a lot of airlines, including Aloha, that if the panels hadn't been put together at the right temperature or were a little dirty or had a little too much moisture, they could be compromised, which it's like, shouldn't you know that? But this kind of makes me think that like all the dumb paperwork that we do at your place is like, oh, this is why. Because planes fucking have ripped apart and shit.
Yeah, and you need that traceability.
Yeah.
Because then they can trace it all the way back down and be like, oh, well, you used rivets out of this batch of rivets, and now we have to go through these rivets to see if they're cracked or something, and that's what caused the problem with the plane.
Yeah. So it was interesting about that that kind of history of like that traceability.
Yeah.
But one of the flight attendants had come up missing, potentially being sucked out of the plane at that decompression.
Okay.
And then several people were injured, but I believe no one other than the one that got sucked out was reported as dead.
Yeah.
But I believe nobody else died on this plane. So I thought that was pretty crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. And then just to still have drinks.
Yeah.
That's like that one plane where the door fell off and they were just still like sitting there like, well, we got to keep going.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I don't know. I wouldn't like that.
No. Are you a big flyer? Have you flown?
I've
Well,
flown.
you've been in a plane because you were in the military and stuff.
Yeah. But yeah, before that, we would fly because my dad lived on the coast and we lived in the middle of the country. So as a kid, we would fly. Me and my sister would fly unaccompanied minors.
My wife was telling me she had done that once.
Yeah.
And that sounds crazy, but
We did it a couple times. Well, back in the day, like, we didn't have to worry about crazy people.
no, you did.
Yeah, but even at the airport, though, you're like, wait here, and then somebody comes and gets you, and then they take you to the next place.
Were you still in with like the general public?
Yeah.
Because I think now they have rooms for it.
They kind of have that too, but for the most part, they were just like, to make sure, or tell you exactly where to go, or put you on that cart thing that drives through. Mm-hmm. You always had some kind of like chaperone-ish.
Somebody that worked there.
Yeah.
But so one of the big things that came out of this flight was the concept that it's not about like flight hours, and it's not about time in the high pressure atmosphere, but that takeoff and landing from the high pressure to the low pressure and temperature zones.
Okay.
And whatever it is that like causes an asteroid to heat up when it enters the atmosphere and stuff,
Yeah. Friction.
Yeah. So whatever that friction is of like the pressure of, I don't know, the air atoms or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. But that was like a huge learning experience, that it's not about flight time or life of a plane and stuff like that. It's
the wear and tear on it.
Yes. Yeah. They because of this, they learned a lot about how the wear and tear of planes actually happens.
Okay. Interesting. I heard this thing on the radio where in Mississippi they don't have an open container law per se.
Nice.
So, because some states you can have an open container if you're the passenger, and then some states you can have an open container as long as the driver can't reach it.
Okay.
And then
how do you not reach anywhere in a car?
I don't know. I think that's more of like, say you take a bottle to a friend's house or like some champagne, and then on the way out you're like, hey, I'm gonna grab that. You have to like put it in the trunk or in the back seat, because if it's right next to you and it's open, they can be like, that's within reach.
Because they can get you on stuff like an open cardboard case.
Yeah.
Like if you drank 4 beers out of a 12-pack, that's technically an open container.
Yeah. But I guess in Mississippi they don't have that, and as long, like, you can get pulled over, and if you're like holding a beer between your legs, if you blow below a 0.08, then you're fine, because you're not legally drunk. So then they can't get you with the open container. So, and I think there's like Louisiana has that, but mostly it's one of those things where like around New Orleans, they're kind of lenient on that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But once you get up farther out to the sticks, they might be like, hey, what are you doing with driving around with an open container?
Yeah. And it in my head, well, as an alcoholic, but in my head, that makes sense. But also, and this is not a legal podcast.
Yeah.
So the numbers on here are just for general information.
Yeah.
But I could see it being like if you 0.08, if you blow like less than 0.04,
right?
Because once you finish that beer, you're gonna go up. But if you blow a 0.07 and then you finish that beer, you might be intoxicated.
Right, but that's probably like a gray area type thing.
Yeah.
Because I know during the lockdowns, some places you could get a beer to go, and they would just put a lid on it, or like shrink wrap it and then tape it. And then so that way the bar or the establishment's not responsible for it, but if the tape is missing, then you're in trouble for it.
Yeah, they were even doing like cocktails in mason jars.
Oh yeah,
I'd see it. Well, the wife had gotten a couple of those.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No, but that led me down the just the beer rabbit hole.
Okay.
And in 1855 in Chicago.
Okay. Is that during Prohibition, or do we know when that was?
I think that was right around there. The temperance movement was starting to creep into places. And they passed an ordinance. Well, they had a lot of Christian and Protestant, or maybe Protestant, one of the ones that were like kind of leaning on the government real heavy and saying that
1920 and 1933. And when did you say this was?
1855.
Oh shit!
Yeah, so it was like
a lead up, maybe.
Yeah, because the really puritanical type people, they were saying that by having taverns open on Sunday was blasphemous towards their Sabbath.
And that's like what it's like in Utah, right?
I think so, yeah, because they have like really strict religious influence on their laws. And so the government was starting to be like, well, okay, well, taverns should be closed. And then they also bumped up the liquor license from $50 to $300.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. And that was yearly to pay for your liquor license, because they were really trying to like make it so people wouldn't drink, I guess. But then with a lot of the German wouldn't, yeah, and if bars couldn't pay that fine, then they couldn't have a liquor license, and then so there's less bars.
Yeah.
But with a big influx of German immigrants and Irish immigrants, they were like the blue collar people, and they were working 6 days a week.
Oh God!
And the only day they have off is Sunday. So a lot of German tavern owners just ignored the law and stayed open.
Hell yeah!
And then
anarchy,
right? And that resulted in over 200 German immigrants being arrested.
Damn. For
just ignoring that ordinance.
Build a bigger jail.
Yeah. And so on April 21st, 1855, a lot of the shop owners planned like a rally to get together and kind of set up a council, almost like a union of bartenders or bar owners. So then that way they could have more like sway with the city council to help maybe be able to open up or not get all these arrests, because 200 people is a lot. Because even Chicago, how many bars can there be, you know? Even if there's...
I don't know, there's a lot of bars around here.
Yeah, but like 200, that seems like a big chunk of the bars that, especially the German and the immigrant section of the town, getting kind of shut down. But, so they wanted to get together and kind of set this up, but of course, as soon as they started gathering, the police showed up. And then, so then they started getting like in pushing matches and stuff like that. And then, of course, some people ran and got their cousins and their brothers, and they said that the immigrants came flooding down from the north side with fife and drums. So I don't know if they were like
flutes, like going into battle.
Yeah, and just like coming down. And they pushed them all the way, the police force, to downtown. And if you kind of know how Chicago is, there's that river that goes through it. Yeah. Well, back in the day, they had... I think they still have drawbridges on them.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but the mayor ordered all the drawbridges to be opened so more immigrants couldn't flood into the downtown area, like right by the, what is that, Lake Michigan? Yeah. Yeah, and then it was so long ago, there's no real, like reporting on it. Okay. But there was gunfire, and a policeman got shot in the arm, and then they said that then they opened fire on the protesters, killed the guy that shot the police officer, and then, of course, after that, it just kind of went pandemonium and everybody scattered to the wind. But there were rumors going around that there were multiple of these immigrants / protesters that got killed, and that the one police officer ended up losing his arm. Damn. Yeah, but they had no evidence that there were any other people that died, or like any kind of like if you were to look it up now, there's no like recording or anything of it except the one guy. But they also said that in like the town square, they had loaded cannons set up. So they were like, well, why would they have these loaded cannons and then not use them, and blah, blah, blah. But that ended up, like, they had a couple more, like, scuffs. But then once the new mayor got in, they he didn't want to have another beer riot on his hand because they ended up calling it the logger riot.
Okay.
And so he dropped the fees to $100 a year. But anybody who didn't pay that fee or that were open on Sunday who were arrested, they still had to stay in jail.
Oh.
Yeah. And then it actually ended up, they got together and reorganized the police force because of pretty much the violence or like what do you call it? Excessive force that they used, which they feel like maybe kind of started the riot in the first place because, you got a bunch of people and there was
all they got are like billy clubs and guns.
Yeah. And they're old.
That's maybe a sign of the times.
Yeah. But it's also like immigrants, versus like whatever. So there's also there was tension there.
Yeah.
So because they also saw the laws as oppressive towards the immigrant population
because they were working 6 days a week and
they're one day off. They're like, nope, you can't drink, like whatever. But then they ended up like getting like a coalition going together, and so then they could go to city council and then air their grievances in a more constructive criticism kind of way instead of just protests and riots in the street. So I mean,
so we've always been having these problems.
Yeah, and I think they didn't get rid of you can't be open on Sunday, but I think they just kind of started ignoring it as long as it wasn't like out of hand.
Yeah,
it became like
if there was a huge brawl or somebody got killed.
Yeah.
They'd crack down on the bar or something.
Yeah, or something happened and the police had to get called in. That would be and you're not supposed to be open on Sunday, so here's a fine on top of that.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
That's interesting. It is interesting how shit has always been like this. Like,
yeah, or like
even this. I'm sure they would say that it wasn't an attack on immigrants, but it certainly disfavored them.
Yeah.
And these were white immigrants.
Right. Yeah, but back then, it wasn't really about race. It was more about country of origin, which I guess, is that your race, or is that...
I think race is different.
Yeah.
But it's the same concept.
Yeah. Because back then, like the Germans, the Irish, the Italian, they weren't seen as like necessarily white people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
they weren't like English.
Right.
But I would think that the English and the French would maybe be a little bit closer than
because
the Germans.
They were more I don't know, posh or astute, where they would come over to the New World with money to establish a business, to do a thing, as opposed to there being a potato famine and you have no other thing to do except come to the New World and then kind of hope to get a job or get a handout or something. Not necessarily that they're looking for a handout. They just hear it's better over there. So then they come over here with, $1 and a dream and hope to raise a family. And then you get stuck with oppression because you like to drink on Sundays.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah. Did you have another one?
No, I didn't.
Oh, you didn't?
No, that's my bad.
Oh, no, that's fine.
I had a bunch of stuff that I looked up, but I just did not take the time to write it.
No, that's fine. This was, if we want to pull the curtain back, like I had these all in my brain, and I kind of had them bookmarked.
Okay.
But this morning, I'm like, I need to write these down. And then the old lady was like, you want to go to this chalk art festival thing? And I'm like, yeah, but I got to sit down at the table real quick and for like a half hour, do like the polish, the research kind of thing.
I will say I have stumbled into a little bit of research on gossip.
Yeah.
And I haven't done, I mean, I'll just throw this in there because, hey, fucking shooting from the hip today, I guess. So I don't have like names or citations or anything like that, but I'd stumbled into this and this concept that gossip is sexist, in that prior to like the women's movement, gossip was seen as a thing that women did to like slander their husbands and stuff like that. And it still shows up in our society now,
right?
Where people don't want you to gossip. They don't want you to tell. They don't want you to either tell your family's
bad
business stuff,
right? You don't air out your family business,
dirty laundry, or they don't want you to tell other people's stuff because you don't want to talk bad about them
or speak out of turn.
And there's this idea that this has kept like a lot of abuse, both like physical, sexual,
or generational.
And so like your dad hits your mom and you're upset about it, but your mom says, "Oh, we don't want to go around airing our dirty laundry."
Yeah.
And it just like keeps that perpetuating.
Right.
And then that kid learns that you're not supposed to air out your dirty laundry. So anything bad he does, he doesn't talk about it or
or anything that bad happens to him.
Yeah. And certainly like everything else, an 80-20 principle where like 20% of your problems are made by 80%, or 80% of your problems are made by 20% of your actions or people. Where like, of course, there's some things that you don't need to be gossiping about,
right?
But if you are being hurt, or your family has had a history of violence or abuse and stuff like that, that stuff should be okay to talk about. I work. I say this. I haven't been down there in a while. I was working with this black barbershop owner, and he was saying that it's pretty big in the black community and his family as well, where like there was a perpetuation of his father being abusive to his mother, and then he learned that, and this guy's like 50 years old, so he's got a lot more experience now, and he was open to talking about it, but he learned that if you made mistakes or whatever, you shouldn't be called out on them because that was gossip or airing your dirty laundry and stuff. And as he grew up, he grew out of that kind of learned experience. But yeah, it's been, I guess, a plague on societal norms for quite a while.
Because
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, now that you're saying that, it was called gossip, and it did have a negative connotation because you didn't want to be that gossip girl or the gossipy person.
Well, and that's the thing too. Like girls gossip, housewives gossip. And that's another reason why it was like steeped in sexism.
Yeah, and that's also a thing where it was also a way to be like, Lorraine, did you notice she was wearing her dark sunglasses today? It's like, well, that's gossip. We don't gossip.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. And that's kind of like the Bill Cosby thing, where I guess if you look into it, people kind of knew that it was going on.
I believe that.
But it was just like hearsay or like gossip, and you're like, oh, but it's Bill Cosby. He can't be doing that. It's like, yeah, but everybody kind of knows that he's a creep. And it was only until a couple of comedians, like with the onset of cell phones and recording stuff, that then it gets put on the internet and then it becomes like out in the open. So I can see how gossip can be like an oppressive thing when it was first like, hey, that's gossip, like shh.
Well, I think it's still trying to be held like that too.
But now they call it tea. Like, well, spill the tea. Let's go talk about the tea.
Well, just because it is normal in some circles, doesn't mean that, like, fucking, who's that dude? That kickboxer dude that is in Romania, and his brother that got busted for like sex trafficking and shit. Oh, you know who I'm talking about though?
No.
I can't think of his name. But his type of content is like that toxic masculinity, like you own women, and this and that, and like that is still trying to be perpetuated. But it is still, I think it is becoming less, but it is still a problem. Like if you have less cancer, you still got cancer.
Exactly.
But it's still better.
than having a lot of cancer.
Than having all the cancer.
Yeah, that's weird because I saw a thing where there's
You keep thinking about that, but what I'm going to say is it's even like enabling in that, like, you know, did you hear about Jane's husband? He's like been gambling all their retirement away. And it's like that guy's never going to get help, and that lady's never going to get help unless you talk about it.
Yeah, or somebody talks to them about it, because you can gossip behind someone's back, but if you're not helping the situation, you know, like, what are you actually doing?
Yeah, or like you know, if she leaves her husband because of that, then it's like, oh, he was such a good guy and this and that. It's like, oh, actually, no.
Right.
He was blowing all their money or drinking too much or this or that.
Yeah, because I've seen movies set in the olden days where the wife does leave and then the mom is like, well, what are you doing? He's rich. He supports your family. And she's like, but he beats me, Mom.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. But so I guess that's like this values changing.
Yeah.
And slowly but surely, because I'm sure stuff like that still happens where...
Andrew Tate is what I was trying to think.
Andrew Tate. Oh, okay. Yeah. Where it's like you stay with somebody because of one thing or the other, but they're really a piece of shit. And it's like, oh, but... And then your family disowns you, and you're like, no, but he was the bad guy. Or she was the bad guy, or, you know, whatever. Either way.
Yeah. And certainly everybody has damning qualities, but you really have to look, is that juice worth the squeeze?
Yeah, exactly. So, on that note, I have another one about a riot involving alcohol.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and it also takes place in Illinois.
Tight.
Yes.
Wow, you're really just Illinois-centric.
Well, I didn't realize that logger riot was in Chicago. I was just, because it was, on Wikipedia, it's called like the Bavarian logger riot.
Oh, okay.
Because of the German immigrants. And then when I was reading it, I'm like, oh, that was in Chicago. But this one took place at Illinois State, which is in Normal, Illinois.
Just Normal, Illinois.
Yeah, and it was 1984. And what happened was, in that year, the state decided to change the drinking age from 19 to 21. And so then all these college kids, they pretty much didn't have a place to go because they couldn't be in the bars and they couldn't go to the nightclubs anymore. So then they would end up just going to like parking lots.
Hell yeah.
Or like they had a lot of off-campus student apartments that happened to be in residential areas. So then the town folks were like, well, now there's these big parties right next door and there's all these college kids, or they're in a parking lot and there's all these college kids, and they were kind of destroying the neighborhood because until the mid 1970s, Normal, Illinois was a dry city.
Oh.
Everybody would go over to Bloomington to drink, but in Normal it was dry, so they still, you know, 9 years later they still had those kind of like prudent kind of people that lived in Normal. So all these like 19, 20-year-old kids that are drinking and causing, you know, a ruckus, they started to complain to the city council. And then so in that year, while all the kids were away for summer, they passed a couple ordinances about the size of a gathering, like how big a gathering could be, and about when you could buy kegs. Like you couldn't buy kegs after like 8 o'clock or something like that. And then also like some open container stuff, because I've heard some stories where people were like, I was just outside my apartment, like on the stoop with an open beer, and then I'm getting harassed by the cops. And the alcohol related arrests in Normal, Illinois for that year shot up 300%.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. And so the students were kind of getting pissed, and they decided to go to the quad and have like a demonstration, you know, like a protest. But you know, like how college kids do, we stay on the quad, there's going to be a guy with a bullhorn, and they're going to chant and stuff. Well, a couple people got the ideas to go to the dorms and just start herding people to this like sit-in protest thing. And so like the numbers swelled until it was damn near the whole student body was in the quad, and then they made their way into town, and they were walking down Main Street, and when they got by the stadium, all these kegs started appearing, and so they started just having like a big party in the street, and like it was like College and Main Street, like where that came together. They just started to have a big party, and so the police force wasn't really equipped for it because they're normally a small town. Because when the kids are in college, they make up like 70% of the population of normal.
Yeah.
And so the police chief, his bright idea was to go down there. He brought his people. They had the cop cars. But then he went down and he started drinking beer with them and talking to them, trying to like just diffuse the situation. But instead, it had the opposite effect, and it got him more excited. Like, woo, the police officers on our side too. And he was like, no. But they ended up marching towards City Hall, and then of course the more rambunctious ones were tearing down stop signs and like kicking over telephone booths, and a couple of them even like whipped rocks into the windows of City Hall. But then they said like some of the kids were also like picking up the broken glass and like putting it in the trash can.
That's funny.
But then they had to get outside help, obviously, because they weren't equipped for this. So then cops were coming in and getting off of buses in riot gear, which because I read a lot of eyewitness accounts, and they said seeing them come off the bus in full riot gear was kind of jarring, and they're like, what are we doing? And some people are like, we're rioting because of beer. This is awesome. Like, so then they started throwing tear gas, and then some of the kids just picked the canisters up and started throwing it back at the cops.
Hell yeah.
And then I guess some guy got up on top of City Hall and just started chucking them into the crowd. And so the crowd dispersed, and basically all the cops did was just like corral them back onto campus to like just get them off out of town, but back, you know, just confined. Yeah. And
that's where that term comes from, is putting things into a pen, like a corral. That's
so funny. Yeah. So like there was 5 arrests. A lot of people were faced with university discipline, so the school was punishing them, not necessarily like the city or the government, I guess. And then some people had minor injuries just from like maybe getting stepped on or smushed or something, or maybe like some irritation from the tear gas. But the city, it always seems to happen that they get a new mayor, and the new mayor was like, well, we don't want...
He's got to make an example.
Well, he's like, I don't want to have a riot again, but also, like they were saying, the student body makes up like 70% of their population, and that's where the revenue comes from for their town. So then he got with the student body, and they set up a student liaison committee, which was like a handful of students would then come to like council meetings and get to hear what's going on, and then take it back to the student body, and then come back and be like, you know, so they opened a dialogue and had communication of how to work these things out. And then they also changed a couple zoning laws, so that way like these student apartment, like off-campus apartments, weren't put right in the middle of a residential area right next to a bunch of single family houses, so that way they were still kind of like corralled, I guess. Yeah. And they also then passed a thing where the businesses could stay open later until like 2 or 3, so that way the students had places to go instead of just wandering around like drinking.
Yeah.
So they couldn't have their big gatherings, and they probably got restricted with the purchasing of kegs, which means you just had to plan ahead and buy 3 before 8 o'clock instead of 8 o'clock rolls around like, shit, we need another keg, you know. And so I just thought that was cool how instead of just putting the kibosh on it, they actually like helped and then started talking with the students. And the university capped their student population to a certain number, so that way they didn't have to grow and they wouldn't push out into the communities and like disrupt or be like disrespectful.
Yeah, balance. Yeah, that is. It is hard because like things do get out of control.
Yeah,
and it'd be great if a bunch of people didn't get shot.
Right.
Tear gas is a pretty decent alternative.
Right.
You know.
So yeah, the second riot I think worked out a little bit better than the first one. Yeah, but the first one I think was more about the immigrants and trying to oppress that kind of thing.
I mean, anything that has to do with a Sunday feels religious. Like you're trying to get people to believe something that you already believe.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I was a young lad, most places like in Iowa on Sundays you couldn't buy beer or liquor until noon.
I remember that too.
Yeah.
And I think that's still the case sometimes.
I don't know because
or maybe it's like a shut-off time earlier. Because like most like gas stations and stuff can't sell past like 1.
Yeah.
But I don't know what the laws are now. But I feel like I remember seeing at grocery stores like the big cages up.
Yeah.
So you couldn't go into the liquor section like kind of earlier or maybe more often.
Yeah, because I know in North Carolina one time when I was in the Marines, we went to go buy like a 2-4, and it was like 11:30, and we're like, we're close enough, and we go walking up, and the lady's like, no, the cash register won't let us ring that up. It's just locked until 12 o'clock, and then it will like read the barcode.
Really?
Yeah, so we had like...
That seems like pretty technologically advanced for when you were a youngster.
Well, it was early 2000s.
Well, fair.
I mean, the lady could have just been lying to us.
Yeah.
Still.
I guess I'm like, you're hella older than me, so you probably grew up in like, you were like 18 in the 70s. I'm just kidding, dude.
Well, back then, man, we smoked doobies in the grocery store.
That's cool. History. It's what made us.
Yeah. And it's weird. It's kind of like history repeating a little bit there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But that also like kind of tells you that there's certain things like I wouldn't call being able to drink an inalienable right, but there are certain rights that you can't really oppress because the people will push back on that. Yeah,
because I mean the legal drinking age, I feel like, I don't know if it's the country or certain states, I feel like it's changed a few times.
Yeah.
Like it went down and then it went back up, and then like you consider the prohibition.
Yeah.
And people were still making it and getting it and selling it. And,
right.
Yeah, something people want to do.
Yeah, but then some things, like seatbelt laws, those were like, I want to say 80s, and people were like, what do you mean I have to wear a seatbelt? The government's going to tell me what I can do in my car?
I think it was more like the 90s, because I remember my mom talking about how, like, I was born in 88, and so she would just, like, set me down in the passenger seat, and I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, I've sat in the wheel wells of cars before.
Oh, yeah.
Because then it was like, well, if you're in the back seat, you're fine. And then in the 80s, we started having public service announcements showing car crashes and people flying from the back seat through the front window.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard because, like, especially like right now, this weird fentanyl situation.
Yeah.
Where even it's like, yeah, I think you should be able to do drugs, but now it's going to kill you.
Right.
And people are still doing it. That doesn't seem like great personal decision making. That there is a very gray area for where the government needs to step in.
Yeah. Well, I feel like they don't want to spend the money. I blame Ronald Reagan.
I don't disagree yet.
Okay.
Unless, do you have more to say about that? Or?
Well, because he's the one that stopped funding state-ran mental institutions or mental help. Mm-hmm. So you could, if you had a problem, you could go to some place and be like, hey, I think I'm crazy, or you would need like 2 relatives to commit you and be like, this person needs help. But they don't do that anymore. And so what they did when they closed all these places was just let them out into the street. And that's why we have this homeless population problem, because back in the day, in like the 20s or 50s, if you're outside the local pharmacy and you're yelling at the P on the sign and then saying that you're like Evel Knievel, people are going to come and grab you and put you in a hospital and then try to figure out what's wrong with you, or just heavily medicate you and keep you from harming yourself and others.
Yeah.
I mean, because I know you hear all the horror stories and all the haunted houses because of all these asylums and stuff. I mean, but at the same time,
and I wonder how much of that was propaganda.
Yeah, and how much of that also, like, how many people actually got help from going to these places? Yeah,
I thought so. I'm a big socialist now. Yeah, because I feel like we've gone so far in one direction that we need a huge swing in the opposite to start balancing out. But I thought that socialized mental health care would be a good middle ground right now, because I feel like that would help addiction, drug use, and maybe homelessness, right? Depression. There's like a huge spike in depression, suicides, school shootings, right? If more people had access to cheap mental health care, I mean, they might get sick and die, but I feel like the amount of effect one person could have on many people would be much better for the socialized mental health care.
Yeah, I can see that, and that would be a good compromise. We can't have universal health care, but can we have universal mental health care? Yes. That would be a good step in the right direction. And like I said, that would help the homeless population and some of those people that maybe are in the spiral. They just need something to stop, and like a place to detox, and a place where you can have a shower and have someone to talk to, and then maybe you can get a hold of your estranged parents, and then you can help build that gap. But if you don't have a place to start and you're just on the street and all they do is like, we are freely giving away this drug so you don't overdose.
Yeah. Like, even if you could have like a couple of therapists.
Narcan, right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Sorry. Yeah, they just put Narcan on the street, and they're like, that'll take care of the homeless problem.
Yeah. Even if you could have a couple of therapists in like an RV. Yeah. And you could go to places and see people. That would be an interesting concept.
Yeah, because like...
Or like a mobile doctor's office. That's
something.
That'd be interesting. I got a good idea.
Yeah.
Copyright Matt Nicky 2025.
Okay. Yeah, because that could work, because that's like the people who do it for clout kind of suck. But like just like barbers that go out and like, hey man, you want a haircut, or here's a couple bucks, you want to go get a shower or something, like that helps. It's like also, but the government's so weird, because there's places that would feed the homeless, but then they would get in trouble for giving food to homeless people. And then it's like, well, what the hell kind of shit is that?
Yeah.
Like,
it's tough.
If you don't want private citizens to feed your homeless population, well, maybe the government should be feeding them. And then you could do it in a sterile cafeteria and make sure that they're getting the right nutrition and stuff that they need.
Yeah.
And then have a guy there to be like, hey, you want me to check out your teeth or give you a haircut? Or
it's tough out there.
Yeah.
But it's okay. That's better than a lot of places.
Right.
Which is not a great argument, but it's what we get.
Yeah. I had this one friend that said, it could always be worse. You could be in a hole in the ground full of water. And I know he meant well.
Oh, God damn, Davey. And on that note, thanks for listening. I promise to do better due diligence next time. Or the same amount, or maybe even less. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I'm glad. Hopefully, you stuck around this long. Glad you did. And you be good to yourselves.
Yes. And remember, we're going to be at Planet Funk Con. If you want to come down and check us out, you might have a microphone. You can get on the podcast. And remember, you have to fight for your right to party.
Oh, I want to. I got the wife made muffins.
Muffins.
So I'm gonna send you home with a couple of muffins.
Cool. Blueberry, chocolate,
blueberry,
cinnamon,
lemon blueberry.
Lemon blueberry.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
that's cool.
Felicia, if you're listening, Dave's got muffins.
Got muffins coming.